Welcome back. Okay, this is the final part of this week's lecture. So we're going to have a brief look at news writing. So I'm not going to go into masses of depth about this at this stage because we'll be doing that in the coming weeks. But I just want to give you a flavour of the sort of things that we're going to be trying to master over the coming weeks. So, okay, writing news. How do we do it? What's it all about? How can we become good, effective news reporters? So firstly, I'd like you just to do a little exercise. Take a look at today's top news stories on the BBC and the Manchester Evening News on their websites, or if you happen to have a print copy of the Manchester Evening News, take a look at that. And irrespective of the stories, whatever the story is, try and think of 3 words that describe the writing style of the opening paragraph. So just press pause for a bit and just consider those stories and the opening paragraphs in particular, 3 words to describe them. So when you've done that, press play again and come back to me. Okay, welcome back. I've had to think about which 3 words describe the opening paragraphs of those stories. And they all begin with C. So the first one is that the writing style is clear. The reader can understand everything. It's easy to read with 1 fact per paragraph is ideal. So it needs to be clear. It doesn't mean it needs to be infantile or anything like that, but there's no complicated words in it. The paragraph must flow, really. Mustn't be too long. So that comes into the next word that I've come up with. It needs to be concise. So stick to the facts. When you're writing a news story, we don't want to hear your opinions. You've got to be very objective and present the facts in an entertaining and informative way, but don't give opinion. Like I said, avoid using long words and avoid repetition as well. If you mention where an incident happened in the first paragraph, then you can give more detailed information of where it happened further down, but don't give the same information again. So avoid repetition. And it's got to be accurate. It's got to be correct. So accuracy is what we're all about. The readers, we've got to gain their trust. They need to know that when they read our news story, that everything in there is factually accurate. We also need to take care of their grammar, punctuation, and spelling. With regard to punctuation, if you've got any issues with things like apostrophes, I had a bit of a problem with that in my teenage years. But get to grips with them, check them out. There's plenty of resources on the internet for things like apostrophes, when to use capital letters, etc., etc. So get to grips with that aspect of news writing as quickly as you can. Spelling, obviously, that's got to be spot on. You lose the readers a bit if if they catch misspelt words and any errors. And also, quotes need to be presented in the right format as well. And that's part of the style guide. And we'll talk you through how to use quotes, how to present them. So our format would be David Lafferty said, colon, space, open quotes, blah, 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 close quotes. But anyway, we'll go into those in greater detail in the workshop. And please remember that reporting the news is about seeking the truth and writing about it in informative, lively, balanced ways with facts, not opinions. Like I say, there's other various platforms where opinion is valid, but in terms of news reporting, you just need to be neutral and objective. Okay. Structuring a news story. It's important to grab people's attention. Again, we've talked about, writing in an entertaining way. Tell them the most important information first. So when you're looking at a story and you're thinking about your intro or your first paragraph, you need to think what will grab my reader's attention. And one way of doing this is to imagine you've witnessed an incident and you go into a coffee shop and what's the first thing you'd say to your friend about that incident? And that'll generally give you an idea of what your intro should contain, really. And you need to get the most important information sort of ranked as you go down the story, because if you think of your own behaviour of how you consume news online, I don't read every word of every story that I read or that catches my attention. I might only read the first 4 or 5 parts, and that's enough to give me a good flavour of what I want to know. So start to prioritize the most important information that you need to get over to your reader. Balance is incredibly important. You've got to get both sides of a story. So if somebody rings you up and says the council haven't emptied my bins for 4 weeks, you can't just run that person's story on its own. You've also got to get an answer from the council as to why. So you need both sides of the story, really, to get the perfect balance. Use quotes to provide opinion. So you're not using your own opinion, you're presenting people's own opinions in the form of quotes. And quotes also give your story what we call colour. They bring life to a story. I'll talk a lot about, that people are the lifeblood of your stories. We write about people and they bring your story to life. It's a lot better to have quotes in a story than just presenting rafts of information with nobody's views reflected. So think about your intro on the story, and then think about quotes and how you'd use them. And again, the best way of doing this is to read lots of stories on the BBC, the MEN, Liverpool Echo, and just have a look, how their stories are written. The more you do that, the better you'll get, and the more used to writing news stories you shall be. And we also believe that you need to get into character when you're being a reporter. No matter what your opinions, you're the neutral and invisible narrator. Don't become part of a story. Don't write Councillor Bloggs told me, it's Councillor Bloggs said. Don't get involved in it. The reader shouldn't know you're there. It should just be consuming what you've written. And then if you remember all that, we'll be right on the way to making you into good reporters. So, okay, we've gone through what's the point. We've looked at the module in a bit more depth. We've discussed the assessments. And I've given you a brief taster of, how to get to grips with news writing. Again, don't worry if you're getting overloaded with information. I appreciate it's early days yet. We've got plenty of time to discuss all these aspects of news writing. And if you've got any questions, please ask me in the workshops coming up next week. And again, we'll be going into the basic principles of writing news. We'll be recapping some of the things we've spoken about today, going into more depth about some things, and then you'll get your first taste of tapping away on the keyboard and producing a news story. So, looking forward to meeting you all and working with you all over the coming weeks and months. So, thanks for listening. See you soon. Cheers.